Welcome to Snakes and Otters, a pointless discussion of eternal questions. Get ready, we're about to live in your head rent-free. Hey, Otterites, this is episode 152. I am Martin.
And I'm Robert.
And I'm Francis.
So we are cheekily calling this an episode about nothing, but genuinely it's an episode about Seinfeld.
Yep.
The show about nothing.
Yes, the show about nothing. And, you know, again, another one of these kind of Gen X touchstone things. It was a hugely popular program as we were in our 20s and early 30s. And, you know, it was different. It was very, very different when it debuted. And the rule was, from the creator, Larry David, no growth.
Right.
The characters are never supposed to get better.
Right.
And that tumps the whole TV show paradigm on its head.
It dumps the entire storytelling paradigm on its head.
Well, yeah, there you go. That's it.
Yeah. I mean, it is the antithesis of what a story should have. You know, it just amazes me the show was on for 8 years.
Yeah, I mean, how do you
milk that?
Yeah, how do you tell a story when there's nothing to tell?
And yet they did it.
Yeah.
Successfully.
But you know, a lot of the stories, it was really a lot of the same things with different sight gags or different people plugged into them. Mm-hmm. So, you know, I remember specifically there was this one episode, because it was so ludicrous, about shrinkage.
Yes.
Oh, the famous shrinkage episode.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right.
So somebody sees George, this woman he's trying to bed, sees him naked after he gets out of the ocean, because they were at some beach house or something.
They were on the island at the beach, and he was changing after they'd been in the ocean.
Yeah. It's like, do you think she knows about shrinkage? I don't know. It's like, oh my God, I got to tell her about shrinkage. Because he was worried he was not terribly well endowed. And, you know, that's the kind of stuff that went on. There was an episode where Elaine was just crazy over JFK Jr. Because he was the big deal. And, you know, just all, and of course there's the Master of Your Domain episode and things like that.
There. Yeah, we'll get there.
But, you know, other than a couple of things that were gimmicky shticks, I think a lot of this just was like the same kind of thing. All right, we're going to do this kind of episode with George. Now we're going to do this kind of episode with Elaine. Now we're going to do this kind of episode with Kramer and then Jerry and so on. You know, so it was, in a way, it was a lot of recycled stuff, but it was done slightly differently in many ways. Because how else are you going to do a show about nothing for 8 years?
Well, they're also masters of the short clip. You notice that?
Yes.
Every single episode is a collection of very short clips, usually with 2, maybe 3 people, and that's about it. But often the main characters or ancillary characters. But so it's dialogue driven.
Oh yeah,
yes,
very much so.
Well, show about nothing oddly enough has to be dialogue driven.
That's right.
Yes,
and it's a snippet moment that the writers take these interactions and string them together into a strange series of occurrences, so to speak, ending somewhere that maybe you expected to go, but probably not. And I think that's one of the magics of it.
Yes. So, listeners, if you're not familiar with Seinfeld and you haven't caught the repeats on TBS for the last 20 years,
he says
because you had a life to live.
Yeah,
tongue in cheek there.
It is a show essentially about Jerry Seinfeld, the stand-up comedian, playing himself.
Yep.
Yeah. And matter of fact, the show opens and ends often, especially ends with him doing a bit of his stand-up.
Doing his stand-up.
Right.
And then it's about his personal interactions, especially with a circle of friends. An ex-girlfriend, Elaine Bennis, played by Julia Louis-Dreyfus. Mm-hmm. High school friend, George Costanza.
Yeah.
Played by Jason
Alexander.
I was going to say, I can't believe that you would.
And I'm not looking at Wikipedia here to get this right. And his across-the-hall neighbor,
Kramer.
Cosmo Kramer, whose first name is not revealed for like 6 seasons, I think.
Very much so, yeah.
And played by Michael Richards.
Right.
And lots of ancillary, as you said, ancillary characters. George's parents.
Yes.
Jerry's parents are in there.
Jerry's parents.
Newman.
Newman. Let's get that one right.
Hello, Newman. Newman is
Wayne Knight.
Yeah, Wayne Knight, his sort of down the hall neighbor, more of a buddy and partner in crime to Kramer, but
enemy in many respects.
Yeah, frenemy, enemy.
A little more enemy than frenemy, but yes,
Jerry. And so it's and again Jerry's interactions with other comedians,
the girls he's dating.
Yeah, he has a constant string of girlfriends that he's dating, and George never has any. And trying to always find one.
George does get a relationship.
He does.
He screws it up, but he gets one.
Yeah, he's always working on it.
George dates, Jerry dates, Elaine dates. None of the relationships, because the characters are so stunted and emotionally unavailable, none of the relationships ever take. Right. Really. Elaine ends up with Putty, essentially by default, because he's pretty much just like her.
As we sit here and describe this show, all I can think is, why the hell did we watch any of this? Because it sounds awful.
Well, yeah, because it sounds like there are no redeeming characteristics to these four main characters.
There aren't.
And there aren't. But you don't really realize that unless you look back at it and see the whole corpus and you think, because of the mandate, no growth, then these people are doomed.
And to be fair, in a sitcom, that is kind of true for a lot of sitcoms. No growth. And meaning, really what that means is no changes to the characters. It's a reset every week.
Right. The infamous reset button that so many different shows would work with over time.
Right. So, in many ways but even so, a lot of shows you've still had some kind of growth just because it's natural evolution of the actor becoming more comfortable as the character.
Absolutely. And in many respects, that's what made some of those longer lasting shows really good.
Right. Look at Family Ties.
Yeah.
I think that's a great example of a show where the actors became so much more comfortable with the characters.
Well, even if unintentional.
Right.
Deep Space Nine or Next Generation are very good examples of that because as the actors got more comfortable, you could do more things with them because they were so imbued with their characters on that.
Sorry, listeners, we are refilling our bourbon glasses. We forgot to do that before the show started.
That's right, yeah.
And let me tell you, talking about Seinfeld, I think you gotta have a drink. Because this is it's some weird stuff.
Should I say, noise for you?
Noise for you, yes.
Yes.
Now, there was...
Is that enough, sir?
Just one more.
One more cue.
Oh, wait, how many? Just one small one. Not that one.
Not that one.
It went on the carpet, so not that one.
One small little cue.
Yes, what?
One little wafer. And the cleaning lady.
But, there was one thread that did continue throughout the show. So, there was a plot that had growth, or a subplot, that I think did have some legs in the show, and that's, of course...
Say when?
In 9:30. Because you went 8:30, so I'm going to go a little later. So there's, the plot, or the subplot, of George and Jerry trying to develop this television show, which George just flat out says in one episode, why don't we just make it about nothing? Which... to me, was the moment, because I didn't watch the show regularly. It was just every once in a while kind of a thing for me. And, there are times I'd watch it every week for a while and then skip it. And that's when it crystallized to me that, oh my God, that's really what this show is.
Mm-hmm. Which was the irony, of course, that they were...
Which is,
pulling that fourth wall, not quite, but sort of kind of.
Right.
Tugging on it a little bit.
A show about itself.
A show, It is the most self-referential show ever.
Yeah. The meta show about the show.
Yeah. So, there is that. And, of course, the TV show does get made. And I can't remember if it gets picked up or not.
No, it does not.
It does not.
As I recall, I hope I get the story right, the Russell Dalrymple that worked for NBC was going to drop them, but then he became infatuated with Elaine. So... he greenlit the pilot, but in order to impress Elaine, he decided to join Greenpeace and quit NBC and was killed in a boat accident trying to stop a whaling ship. So nobody knew what he wanted to do with this show, Seinfeld. So the next person said, no, we don't want this. And so they never got to make their show.
Because I remember they filmed the pilot. I remember an episode about that.
Yes. And again, the show that they were making included like a guy like Kramer,
right,
and a girl like Elaine. I mean, so it was,
and there was a Newman, and
so it was this, and they didn't get the reverence. They're like, I don't get it, Jerry. I don't get it, Jerry. It's like, but these characters, this is you, but then it got. As I recall, that's what the joke was on them.
That joke was used more than once. Because remember, they met the mirror versions of themselves once.
Elaine had a new set of friends who were like nice people versions of all the guys.
Right.
Like it was a nice guy Jerry and a nice guy George and a nice guy Kramer, and she couldn't stand him.
Right. But I mean, no, one time on the street, there was like the four of them together met another four that were just like them. I mean, even dressed the same the whole bit. So, that joke went more than once. But I like the fact... Yeah, I do remember that.
It was the same episode.
Because she was... but I don't think it was the same group of people, though, was it?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, she was with her new friends and saw all of them on the street. And, like, the new friends didn't get the idea. Whereas Jerry and George and all them were like, hello, nice to meet you. What a bunch of losers. And... It's like, but they're just like you, only nice.
Well, they weren't wearing goatees, so that's kind of what they
did. Yeah, it wasn't mirror. Goatees.
Yeah, that would have been even funnier if it had been. Because then that would have been classic. But, so, even in the show, they made fun of themselves, pretty openly, which is kind of interesting. Not all shows can do that. But when you're a show about nothing, kind of anything's open to be made fun of. But, the interesting thing about this show about nothing is the number of cultural touchstones that have come out of it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
The master of your domain. That's probably one of the biggest. That's not... It's one of, but the biggest is the airing of differences at Festivus.
Yes, Festivus.
Airing of grievances. Yes.
Airing of grievances and the feats of strength for Festivus. So George's father's made-up holiday,
right?
After he couldn't buy a doll for George because of a fight in the store over whatever it was George wanted,
right?
So, Festivus, master of your domain, no soup for you.
I was going to say the soup Nazi. You can say to somebody on the street, "No soup for you," and everybody knows what you mean,
right?
Or say somebody you encountered in a restaurant was like the soup Nazi. People know who that is and what you mean.
Yes.
The Master of the Domain was a landmark episode.
Yeah.
Dare I say? Can I say it? Is it all right to say?
Yes.
An episode about a masturbation contest,
or a lack thereof. Really.
Yes.
How long can you go without?
It's called the contest, where the four characters all made a bet and had to put up money, say who could go the longest without pleasuring themselves. And they made Elaine put in double. Because it's easier for a woman to go,
to go longer.
To go, because guys, we can barely stop for right now,
And Kramer proved that. Yeah, all they had to do was look out the window and see a beautiful girl. He disappears all of a sudden, comes back a minute later. I'm out!
I'm out, Jerry! I'm out! So that was the setup, too, was Jerry was dating a woman who was not ready to be intimate with him.
Is this the one where he was dating...
yes.
The girl who went on to be Daphne?
Yes.
Yes.
Who would go on to be in Frasier and Daphne, Jane Leaves. She played a virgin. And Elaine discovered that John F. Kennedy Jr. attended her gym. And there was a woman across the street in the other apartments that left her curtains open for Kramer. And George's mother was in the hospital in a shared room. And George had to watch the next door, like through a screen, watch her get a sponge bath.
Well, he could win that one, I would think.
So there's these circumstances happening, driving them out of the contest. And I believe George claims to have won. But then at the end of the series, in the final episodes, the Good Samaritan episodes, where they go on trial, he admits to Jerry that he cheated, that he lied about winning the contest. So, and Jerry says, well, I did too. Because they were the last two in. So, but...
Which, again, perfect sense for those characters.
Right, and of course, the Virgin discovers about the contest, hears about the contest, says they're all horrible people, and ends up sleeping with John F. Kennedy Jr. instead of Elaine. So,
yes, that's right. That's right.
Yeah. You're all horrible people.
Yeah, so?
So they never did get it. So this is a very famous episode, very, to mention it in general and then to make a contest out of it. That even for the 90s, that was really
so that's come a long way.
Yeah, that's
we thought All in the Family was subversive in the 70s. Yeah. Wow, in just 20 years.
Well, I don't know if I'd call that subversive. I mean, All in the Family was subversive in many ways. Yeah. Although actually I think Maude was more subversive.
It was, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But it was just out there.
It was out there. It was out there in kind of a Married with Children kind of way.
Right, it's a risk. Would anybody really find this funny?
Yeah.
Or would
Married
they
with
just
Children
recoil
predated it just barely, and
by several years.
Yeah, I was gonna say it took all those risks early.
Yeah,
it was
Married with Children was the way I like to put it was they said out loud to everybody in the family what you were thinking about your own family.
Yeah.
And it got traction. It was funny.
It did.
It was
It was kind of like taking some of the because stand-up comedy was huge in the 80s.
Right.
Because you had so many guys that came out of stand-up comedy to become on television and movies and what have you.
Yeah. So people began to look for new comics.
Which is how Seinfeld does.
Yeah. Who's the next Robin Williams?
And so we were kind of used to that sort of thing. So it's kind of like seeing stand-up comedy in a way, or the kind of material that you would see. But with Seinfeld, I think less subversive and just more off the wall without really caring. The barriers I think had been broken.
Yeah.
And now they were just actually playing with them. It was actually somebody finally saying, well, yeah, I guess we can do anything we want. And now somebody finally did come along and do it.
Yeah. Making an obstacle course out of the road cones.
Right.
That the shows in the past wouldn't have crossed. It's not so much... We're beyond crossing the road cones. We're dancing in between them.
Right. Stupid stuff that they did. Like there was one time Jerry's in a car and he scratches his nose. But he doesn't scratch his nose like I just didn't even think about it. I just took my finger, kind of hooked it and scratched my nose. But that's not how he did it. He put the finger on the side of his nose and moved it up and down, which if you're looking at him from the profile, looks like he's picking his nose.
Yeah.
And of course, a beautiful woman pulls up in the car next to him.
Yes.
Thinks he's picking his nose. Of course, he wasn't, because all he had to do was this to prove that he wasn't. But slide his finger forward without.
And the car starts to drive off, and he starts yelling, "No, I wasn't doing that."
Exactly. That's the kind of stupid stuff they did. Or Kramer. I still think this is brilliant. So I will give them this. When he would cook, he would wash his vegetables when he took a shower.
Yes.
Shower cooked meal. That's right.
That's right. Yes. Shower cooked meal. Yes. So, which of course nobody then wanted to touch his food.
There was always, Kramer was always coming up with bizarre ideas about stuff. The episode where he somehow or another became a tour guide for a Japanese tourist group.
Yeah.
And instead of having them stay at a hotel, he had them stay in his apartment and sleep in this massive bureau drawer set that he had in the apartment.
Yes.
So they can't get out of the drawers. And I think he had a hot tub in the room too. And the hot tub, the steam swelled the drawers shut.
Oh my god!
So he had to get.
I don't think I ever saw that one.
He had to get an axe to chop the tourists out of the dresser, out of this handmade furniture that, I think Elaine wanted to buy off of him or something, but they had to chop it to pieces to get the Japanese tourists out of the dresser.
Or the time that he got the license plate, Ass Man, accidentally, and people were saying I thought he was the shit. No pun intended.
Yeah. Actually, a very good pun there. Very much so. Yeah.
But that's the kind of stuff that went on constantly.
I'm surprised at how much of this I remember. I'm not sure how that I guess I have watched it a bunch of times.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that I ever went back and watched them in reruns. Some stuff really does stick out.
Yeah, because it was so bizarre. I mean,
and that's it. It's the bizarreness of it.
And that's kind of what, the fact that Kramer decides that he wants to wear his clothes hot, so he starts putting them in pizza ovens. To warm them up, to warm his pants up. And eventually he burns them, of course, because he's looking to constantly get them hot when he pulls them out. So the whole thing is about that. We didn't even talk about the one at the diner, things that happens at the diner.
Oh, yeah, the diner, yeah.
Yeah, and one of my wife's favorite episodes is about the time that Elaine goes in and she asks, there's no toilet paper, and she asks the woman in the stall next to her.
Oh, yeah.
Spare a square.
Just can you spare a square? And it's like, no. And Elaine is just frosty with this whole thing, and she spends the whole episode, mad at this woman who she does see come out. Well, the woman comes in comes into the diner at one point, and Elaine heads to the bathroom and steals all the toilet paper from all the stalls, knowing the woman is going to go in there. That nice. she will be.
Nice.
That's just one of those brilliantly metas that they had a tendency to do that. Yeah. They take this stupid idea and run it through the whole episode.
I will give the writers this: they could take the tiniest thing and make an entire episode out of it.
Yeah, like that. Yeah.
Yes.
And Kramer going on strike at the bagel shop when he's like the only employee.
Well, Kenny Rogers Roasters, you remember that?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Which was very good food, actually, and they were just trying. I guess it was free advertising. I don't know how it happened, but they opened up a restaurant next to Kramer's apartment, and when they turn on the sign, the red light just messes with him, and he tries to protest it, but discovers it's damn good.
Well, they change personalities because they change apartments.
Yeah.
They have to swap apartments so Kramer can get some sleep, and Kramer starts acting like Jerry. Like he's kind of normal, and Jerry starts acting all schizo like Kramer because he's staying in Kramer's apartment. They change personalities.
Yeah,
that's a thing of doing that.
That was the Kenny Rogers episode, right?
Yeah, because when the lights are on, it shines through.
I vaguely remember that. Yeah.
So, I think it's a good spot to stop for a bourbon break because I just about polished off what I poured.
Oh, wow! You must have been really liked that one.
What are we having now? It's McKenna?
McKenna Bourbon Whiskey, that's correct. Yeah, it's Henry McKenna. It's Kentucky State Bourbon Whiskey from Sour Mash, established 1855. It's made here locally, here in nearby to Louisville, here in Fairfield, which is just down the road from us here. A little ways. I picked this up. It's very inexpensive. It's just less than $15 a bottle. On the recommendation,
that's great for $15.
Well, that's exactly what I was told. Because I was looking for something new last night, and the local folks says you really, really need to try this. He says we cannot keep it in because it is so popular, and it's not the price point. Everybody that comes back really, really loves it.
It's got a really nice. Again, it's more in the mouth. Mm-hmm. Back of the gums a little bit. Hits you a little bit in the nasal passages, depending on where you swish it around and how much you sip at one time. So it's got a little bit more bite than the Wild Turkey, but not by much.
Yeah,
it's still fairly smooth.
Well, that's apparently it is one of. They said it's one of the most underknown great secrets in the bourbon world. Henry McKenna is just a really, really good brand. And from what you guys are telling me, I don't have it at the moment. But
finishing off your Wild Turkey,
I am. But Martin's going for a second pour, which is outstanding.
Let me smell the straight here.
Yeah,
because you and I are both having it on ice, so it's even going to smell different.
Mm-hmm. It's not quite as fragrant as the Wild Turkey.
No, definitely not.
But it
does have a nice explosion of flavor on the tongue. I'm not really getting much in the bouquet here from screw top. We don't often encounter screw tops in the bourbons we get. But again, it's good.
It's very good. That's right. I mean, it's not meant to be a $50 bottle. It's a $15 bottle.
They could charge more for that.
Yeah, they could. And it's I'm delighted that you all like us. I always worry when we try new things. Will I get something that you like? The only one that you didn't, Jefferson Reserve, is the only one that got a bad rating here that I had bought.
Yeah, because even the what was it? The Jim Beam Black. Got the initial bad review from you, but then you changed it after you had it on ice.
It was a little mellower on ice.
Yeah.
This is dark chocolate.
Really? You think so?
I usually bow to Martin's taste buds here. He usually nails it every single time.
A little fruit and a little dark chocolate. I like it.
I get the fruity. I'm not really getting the dark chocolate.
How about that?
But I'm not a huge dark chocolate fan, so I just associate that
Yeah.
with just dark bitter chocolate.
Yeah.
So.
I didn't get it till the second little pour there.
And you are taking it over ice too, so
Yeah,
there's
and then, but that little bit was a little less diluted. But that's
Bardstown.
yeah, yeah. It's staying on the tongue like chocolate to me.
It does stay on the tongue, yeah.
Yeah, that's
Although maybe because I switch it to the back of my mouth, I get it back here in the gums.
yeah. I didn't keep it up front and chew on it up here.
Yeah, I mean I got a little bit on the tongue, but back here, so I can get kind of a not quite a whole mouth thing, but
fantastic. I'm glad that you guys liked it.
Yeah, I mean, for $15, it's like holy smokes.
Yeah, that's if you're gonna spend, if you only have $15 to spend on a bourbon, that's the one you get.
Yeah, that's very, very mellow.
That's what they told me. They said that they can't keep it in because it's so very popular.
It's 80 proof, so it's not a high alcohol
It's not as
content.
high end as higher in the proof area.
Yeah, a lot of the
it's
bourbons
easier
we get are higher proof, which actually lends themselves better to the ice because
Correct. It damps it down a little bit there.
Yeah. So that's good stuff. I would recommend that.
Fantastic, sir.
Yes. So the show about nothing. Why do you think it was? Why did it become so popular? Because in my mind, that's the biggest question about it. Is it just how bizarre everything was?
I think it was a moment, the right moment for something unusual. Because you're coming out of the Cosby era, and coming out of an era where the family comedy dominated. Again, you mentioned The Facts of Life, and all of those were geared towards kids, and you had the circumstance where, as the kids got older, sitcoms to try to revive themselves would add in a young kid back in, so there'd be a cute little 3-year-old as part of the show. So this was, a contradiction to Full House or something like that.
Yeah.
So it was for people who wanted to find something different, and it was the right moment for it. There was nothing else like it before.
Well, you're right, because family comedies...
Even Friends is innocent compared to this.
Well, Friends is a little bit later.
Friends is a little later, too. That's correct. I mean,
it starts while this is going on, but it starts after.
Right. I mean, Courtney Cox was actually one of Jerry's girlfriends in an earlier season.
Yeah, actually, the list here of his girlfriends is pretty impressive. That we've pulled up on the screen here, obviously.
I don't think it doesn't list Dolores, though, it looks like.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I mean, interesting. But, so Friends was a different... Friends, I think, took a lot out of this because you notice there's no kids anywhere anymore. But this is groundbreaking because an adult situation comedy.
Cheers doesn't have kids.
That's right. I mean,
Cheers is probably the first big that I can remember non-family oriented comedy. It's a workplace comedy.
Yeah.
But most of the others.
Yeah, you're right.
Although, I mean, you got to go back to the 70s, like Mary Tyler Moore Show when she's at the TV station. That's not a family comedy; it's a workplace comedy. And that's
the thing about it. It was kind of neither.
Yeah,
it was not a workplace comedy, even though sometimes Jerry's workplace came into it. Right. But his workplace is a bar.
And George's did. He worked for the New York Yankees.
Yeah.
Elaine
working for Peterman and all stuff like that. They would have those moments. This is an adult comedy. Everybody's adults here doing adult things, which shatters a few molds. Because you don't have mom, dad, kids. There's none of that going on in through here.
There's no. I think what sets this apart from prior ones, even not with the exception of Married with Children, because it also makes no attempt at this, is it makes absolutely no attempt to be wholesome.
Well, that's correct.
And even if you go back to like the Mary Tyler Moore Show, it's still making an attempt to be wholesome.
Right.
Yeah.
Because it had to.
Yeah.
Right.
That's why I say Maude is more subversive than Archie Bunker, because she absolutely made no attempt to be wholesome. She was definitely in your face. Right. Whereas Archie Bunker had its wholesome attempts. Right. Even though Archie Bunker was, could be a horrible person in his beliefs, in his practices, most of the time, day to day, he wasn't.
Right. Yeah. He was still a beloved character.
Yeah.
Despite all his glaring flaws.
Yeah.
Whereas in this case here, nobody's wholesome, and that's the point.
Right. And they revel in their flaws.
Right. Whereas, because Cheers is a very good example, because those characters, flawed though they are still attempting to be wholesome.
Right. Well, and they're all friends, although mainly at the bar.
Right. Yeah.
The bar is the primary setting, but they are, in many ways, they're beyond superficial friends. I mean, these four in Seinfeld, they're all because they can't make deep friendships. I mean, the deepest friendship is probably George and Jerry.
Yeah.
But it's a friendship of convenience almost.
Kind of, yeah.
Because they knew each other and they were so much alike.
And probably nobody else would be friends with them.
Yeah, and it's just there's no bond really. It's just
history.
Nobody else will be around us.
Right.
So all we got is the two of us.
Right, and eventually Elaine and Kramer, they tack on for kind of the same reason.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It still amazes me that even that's enough for it to catch on. And maybe just because I didn't care for the show that much, it's harder for me to understand how it was so popular for so long. Because actually, they had to talk him into an 8th season, if I remember correctly. I think they wanted to end it with 7.
Yeah, that's right. I do remember that. Yeah, there was a...
And then there was talk about a 9th season taking place after they got out of jail. But I can't remember. But it seems like that was also a discussion that came up later. It's like, I forget how long they got in jail, but then there was talk of doing an episode that many years later after they got out of jail, which of course never happened.
Well, and because they all tried to go on to do other things after this, I know Julie Louis-Dreyfus had some success. New Adventures of Old Christine comes to mind.
Yes, she had another show
and Veep.
And Veep, yeah,
she's had a couple shows.
She's had a couple of that, but Jason Alexander and Michael Richards both crashed and burned with their attempt afterwards. I mean,
Jason Alexander, he's had several roles. He's done a lot of character acting.
Himself, that's correct. But his headlining the show failed very.
Well, he didn't headline this show. Really, Seinfeld's the only one that.
But that's where
the show.
they thought these guys are so popular. Let's give them their own show. So you got the Jason Alexander show, and then of course you got the Michael.
I don't remember that.
Well, precisely. That's right. It did.
No, seriously. I mean, I really don't remember they ever had their own shows.
Yeah,
they did very, very briefly. And
very
Michael
brief.
Richards kind of have a self-immolation moment in a nightclub act.
That's correct. That destroyed his.
Yeah, he really went off the rails.
He had a fairly decent placing. His both in a time slot and all that stuff with his show. He was expected to be, let's continue Kramer's antics, and that kind of went into it. Jason Alexander's show it just wasn't very good at all. I'm not even sure it got picked up past the pilot, but the pilot did show, and it didn't work. He went on to do other things, and because he's a talented guy, fantastically talented guy, but for whatever reason. They try, you know how it is. If you've got lightning in a bottle, you want to try to recreate it somehow,
and that almost never works.
And it never works. That's right.
You know, Frasier is the example that proves the rule. You know, the exception that proves the rule.
Sure.
Because that actually was a better show than Cheers.
Very much so, but it was completely different too.
But it just had the same character.
Same character, but a lot of that, and I think hindsight tells us this, and we'll get into it in our Frasier episode. That's because Kelsey Grammer is an absolute genius.
He is. He is.
Coming from his background, a difficult growing up background, and lots of breaks he should have got and never did. He really didn't get a chance to show his genius until he finally headlined the show, and then of course now he's still the best. Love Kelsey Grammer. He's somebody else I'd love to talk. I'd love to have a beer with Kelsey. Yes, that's right.
That'd be super cool. I think I mentioned him in one of the dinner posts on snakesandotters.com. Is to invite Kelsey Grammer.
Oh, I'd love to have dinner with Kelsey Grammer.
That would be great. Yeah.
He's just a. I understand he's just a nice guy. He really is. Can talk about lots of stuff. So He's not.
Well, he's a good actor. He's got great comedic timing, and that's true for these guys. These four on Seinfeld, it really is lightning in a bottle because they were able to play off each other so well.
That's it. Yes,
and they had good on-screen chemistry. Which is an amazing thing because all their characters are so shallow and horrible that they could have on-screen chemistry as characters as well as actors with anybody.
There's a lot of bravery for what they did.
Oh, yeah.
Because who's going to sign up to be on a show where your character's awful? Well, it's very rare actors would be willing to do that.
I'm willing to bet that that's not how even Jerry Seinfeld looked at these characters starting out.
Yeah.
Because...
Yeah, that evolved a little bit. I think there's some truth to that.
Well, I don't know if how much that evolved, but, this is... Obviously, it's based somewhat on his life. Not entirely.
Based somewhat more, or not more, but also on Larry David's life as well.
And so Larry David, especially if it's more on his life, he's not going to sell, these are horrible people. To the people that he's casting.
But it would have been an interesting casting discussion about how do you get people to do these parts, and how do you go to Julia Louis-Dreyfus and say, look, we're going to do this bit where you can't dance. So this bravery of making her look so foolish trying to dance, it's really brave of them, and it was, like you said, a really good immediate chemistry that really worked.
Yeah, and as with any comedy, that's more important than just about anything else. Because you can have really great scripts, and if the characters don't mesh or have chemistry, it doesn't work. And the best example I have seen of this, so we all know we've seen American studios try and take British shows and make American versions.
Right.
The Office is probably the best example of the one that worked.
Right.
Then there's also the IT crowd or the IT crowd, depending on how you pronounce it. That didn't work so well as an American
Life
version.
on Mars was another one.
I don't even know that one.
It was John Sim was in it. It's fantastic British. They did a good job here. Harvey Keitel. It was just a one seasoner. It just couldn't do it.
Well, so the example I think is the best example of how the script is not the most important thing is Coupling. So Coupling is this British show, lasted 4 seasons, which for them is only like 6 episodes, a series they call them.
Yeah.
And it's a 40-minute comedy, and it's about sex and dating. That's all it's about. But it is freaking hilarious. It's one of the few shows Mrs. Robert and I can watch together, and it's just absolutely hilarious. And the guy who played the British. One of the British officers in the original Pirates of the Caribbean is the main male character on the show. Yeah. I can't remember his name. But anyways, they took the first episode, the premiere episode, did an American version, line for line. It sucked. I mean, some of it was a little bit funny, but it was awful.
Yeah.
The characters had no chemistry together. It just didn't work. So... yeah, the only way you could do a show about nothing is if the characters interact and play off each other well. And I guess that's probably the strongest thing going for Seinfeld.
Yeah.
Because obviously it's not the writing. I mean, it's partially the writing.
Yeah,
but you're writing about nothing. How much can it be the writing?
Yeah, but to come up with these insane gags.
Yeah.
These situations to get these people into that people with emotional depth wouldn't have gotten into to begin with. Or people who are capable of being truthful with others wouldn't have gotten into to begin with. But then you take these shallow people who don't want to admit things and want to lie and obfuscate, and it was very funny. It was very good writing with very good chemistry that really, really worked.
Well, and they picked up on this as they went along because it got to the point where they started to experiment.
Yeah.
And they did an actual episode, you remember the one, completely backwards. Each of they start at the end and go backwards in time, one scene at a time.
I vaguely remember that.
Yeah.
It was ridiculous. I don't think it was a success in my opinion, but they had the ability to do that. What studio is going to allow you to experiment with something like that didn't really succeed, in my opinion?
When your show is about nothing and your entire show is filled with 2-minute bits, it just proves what does it matter what order it goes in.
That's exactly right.
In a lot of ways. I mean, obviously, some things it does. Master of your domain, there's an order to that. Yeah. But, that could still be just as funny. I mean, not just as funny, but could be funny another way. But probably the majority of the episodes doesn't really matter.
That's right. And that was kind of what they were going more with that one. Because it was in one of the... I don't know if it was the last season, but it was the last 2 seasons, certainly.
Yeah, probably the last season is the one that got the silliest, in my opinion.
Yeah.
What I vaguely remember. I probably was watching it more regularly in the last few years than I did in the earlier years.
Right.
But, yes, my vague recollection is they got sillier, which is kind of hard to do for this show.
Well, it also may lead to the idea that Jerry Seinfeld kind of knew that maybe they were done at 7. And of course they probably paid him a boatload of money, so saying, come on, guys.
And that's my vague memory. I could be wrong also about them kind of being talked into an 8th season, but that seems like what I remember.
7 is normally kind of where contracts end. They don't most.
You're lucky if you get past 2, much less to 7.
Well, that's right. Yeah, I mean that's usually the maximum that they'll go to if you're renewed.
And there was a lot of pressure to increase salaries at this time because Friends is doing the same thing.
Right. Friends was very early on. They were able to band together and say, nope, we all get paid the same. And the early thing was $100,000 an episode. And then starting in the second season. And there was a very real danger that at that time that they could have said, all right, fine, we call your bluff and we cancel the show.
Yeah.
But luckily producers realized they had something good.
Yeah. Or conversely say, well, we're willing to pay this one, and this one that much, but we're going to cut the other 2 people out.
Yeah, they could have done something like that. But I think that would have ruined the show.
Yeah. So they understood the chemistry needed to be all 6 characters of Friends and keep that going. And they did. And there was that solidarity of we're paying all 6 of us the same. Mm-hmm. And we're all equal. And they got it. They got what they wanted.
Yep. And I applaud them for doing that because very easily that could have turned into an unequal pay situation. Yeah. And it needed to be all the same.
Yeah.
It's like on Seinfeld. Very easily, all 4 of them should have made the same amount.
Right.
Now, if Jerry Seinfeld wants to get more because he's putting more into the back end of things, that's fine.
Yeah.
But for the acting portion, you need all 4 of them.
Yeah. It wouldn't have worked without everybody, without Kramer.
Right. And even some of the, whether it be Newman or Jerry's parents or George's parents, that interaction with all of the occasional characters also helped. But yeah, the 4, you're right. If you take any one of them out, it doesn't really work so much. It's not as funny. It's almost like they're parts of a personality.
All 4 of them together is an actual person.
Yeah. It's still a horrible person, but at least they make up a whole person now.
Yeah. Well, gentlemen, that's pretty good.
And we didn't even mention it on the podcast. They're real and they're spectacular.
Just like us.
Just like us. That's another touchstone phrase that has made it into the culture.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, yada yada yada.
Yeah.
That's right.
And not that there's anything wrong with that.
Right? Yes, not that there's anything wrong with that. Yeah.
So if you hear that and you don't know where that's from,
it's Seinfeld.
It's Seinfeld. It's Larry David and Jerry Seinfeld and the writing team.
30-year-old show.
Yeah.
That's kind of the depressing part. The show's freaking 30 years old when it started.
Right. And it still commands our popular imagination.
It does. Well,
in certain areas.
I don't know that it commands our imagination so much as parts of it has just become part of the culture.
Yes.
Because consciously, I don't think it does. Not like a Friends. Because Friends is still on constant reruns.
Mm. Yeah, right now I don't think Seinfeld's on. It's sort of been supplanted a little bit.
A little bit by Big Bang Theory.
Big Bang and 2 2.5 Men.
2.5 Men, yeah.
Which is
I don't know how much that's... Of course, I don't do a whole lot of network television of any kind.
2 2.5 Men is usually on at least 2 different channels in the evenings.
Okay. See, I don't have... almost to the point where we can finally get rid of all the cable. And I don't have a box downstairs. I just have an Apple TV and all the subscriptions downstairs in my office. So, I don't know what's on anymore.
Yeah, Paramount Network.
And
a couple others. But even like CMT now is playing sitcoms.
Oh, wow.
In the evening. So generally most evenings, if you come home streaming or cable and you're watching channels and not on demand, you will find...
Wait, they still have channels?
They still have channels. You'll find, of course, Law and Order, 2.5 Men, probably Big Bang Theory will then start about 7, and Mom right now.
Oh yeah, Mom. Yeah.
So some Chuck Lorre. You'll find a lot of Chuck Lorre, and a lot of Dick Wolf right now.
Yep.
So
good stuff, though. I mean, I admit I enjoyed watching the show, but for the life of me, I'm not entirely sure why. Other than it's just goofy.
No soup for you.
Yeah, no soup for me.
That might be a very good way to end this.
All right, so, well, I guess that we are. So
yes. No soup for you. What's next?
Hoopajoop, boys. It's Hoopajoop time. We have our Hoopajoop time. That's right. We can talk about some cool stuff next time, but we'll keep it a secret. You come tune back in, and you'll hear...
Hope you enjoyed another pointless discussion of eternal questions. Remember, new episodes published every Friday at noon Eastern.
Spread the word. We're on all the major podcast platforms. And leave us a comment or review because that helps others find us.
We're on Instagram, Twitter, as well as our website, snakesandotters.com.
I'm Martin.
And I'm Robert.
And I'm Francis. Join us next week. Same snake time, same otter channel.